Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Make it just throughout that. Mr. Speaker, it is my task today to close the sectoral debate for the fiscal year 2016-2017 and the first for this new administration. I'm indeed honored to do so. So on behalf of the government, I applaud everyone who took the time and effort to make a meaningful contribution to this very important debate. While we won't be able to highlight all the presentations, we certainly appreciate the quality of the presentations, the sense of sincerity with which they were delivered, and the work that was done on the research of the subjects that were presented. Mr. Speaker, there have been several developments internationally since we opened this debate just over a month ago. Most notably, the world has been shocked by the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union, which has had a tremendous impact as uncertainty about the future crept into various trading markets. Within a day of the announcement, the British pound fell to a historic low, wiping billions of pounds off global markets. It's no surprise that Brexit has dominated discussions on the world stage. As a government, we are watching the developments closely. Concerns have been raised by members of the private sector, and the matter was also discussed at CARICOM Heads of Government meeting last week in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we remain in close contact with the British High Commission in Kingston on the matter, and we are monitoring the situation to determine the possible ramifications. Mr. Speaker, through a collaborative effort on both sides of the aisle, over the years, Jamaica has seen improvements in its rankings on the Ease of Doing Business Index. Word recently came that Jamaica has jumped 7 places on the index of Latin America and Caribbean this year. This is a commendable achievement, but more needs to be done to enable existing and potential investors to implement their development projects in a timely manner without bureaucratic hassle. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you significant steps are being taken to remove the structural barriers which have delayed so many projects. This will be one of the major tasks of the Economic Growth Council and by my ministry in working also to remove these impediments to growth. Turning to the sectoral debates themselves, Mr. Speaker, perhaps the most common theme of all the presentations on both sides made during this debate were the need for growth and job creation, and in general, the concern about the future of our country and our people. Mr. Speaker, as we have heard from the Minister without portfolio with responsibility for growth and investment, with careful management, our economy can rebound and find a path to growth. The Prime Minister has given this mandate to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. However, if we are to have the kind of lasting growth that will truly move this country from poverty to prosperity, then every member of this honorable House, and indeed every single Jamaican, must play a part. Already we can see that persons are getting on board with members of the private sector the farming community, and ordinary Jamaicans are expressing commitment to playing their part in this process. The Economic Growth Council, chaired by Mr. Michael Lee-Chin, has set plans to grow the economy's gross domestic product by 5% annually in the next 4 years. It's a tall task, Mr. Speaker, but we believe it can be done. The Council will target major local and international players, and once they meet all the requirements, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation will help fast-track the projects. You know, Mr. Speaker, sometimes when we speak in this House, we speak as if our words will never come back to haunt us. Mr. Speaker, the opposition spokesman on industry, investment and commerce during his presentation said, and I quote, I feel compelled to warn against the increasing czar mentality, as the historical experiences and performance of czars should not be recommended in forward-thinking 21st century management, as there is a tendency to concentrate power in the hands of individuals rather than institutions. Is this compatible, he asked, with our democratic traditions and the direction of leaders preparing their economies and citizens for the 21st century, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive that while the opposition spokesman for industry refers to czars as a thing of the past, the opposition spokesman on housing and rural development is doing otherwise. And I quote what he said, I am further calling on the Prime Minister to not just name a growth czar, but to also name a czar for rural development. I am suggesting that this czar focus on completing all the development plans for the various parishes. Two completely opposite sentiments coming out of the same side of the House. Mr. Speaker, perhaps at this point, I think we should simply move on, because those two contradictions speak for themselves. First, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to commend the Minister of State with responsibility for roads. I think it is rarely seen in this House where a more comprehensive and creative presentation was made by a minister in respect of dealing with roads across the country. And we commend him wholeheartedly for hitting the road running without delay. And many on that side have already commended him privately, although they're afraid to do so publicly. Mr. Speaker, water, transport, energy, our ports, waste disposal networks, and facilities are all essential ingredients for the success of our economy. Hence, infrastructural investments have many long-term economic benefits, including increasing economic growth, productivity, and providing significant positive spillovers. In this context, the Minister with responsibility for infrastructure outlined a wide range of infrastructural projects across the island, too numerous to mention at this time. We are, Mr. Speaker, developing near-port lands for logistics. Well, you would know what I'm even referring to. So, developing our cruise ship ports. Montego Bay, for example, is being improved to accommodate up to 3 cruise ships. In the area of water, in terms of water, there are plans to improve supply right across the island and to ensure consumers are drought resilient. In the Kingston metropolitan area, some $7 billion will be spent as we seek to make non-revenue water levels more acceptable. In the rural areas, some 36 water supply projects are being targeted. In the area of energy, Mr. Speaker, critical to the whole business of competitiveness and growth is the availability and cost of energy. In this regard, we must commend the Minister of Science, Energy and Technology when he says that as a nation we need to change the way we look at energy and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Initiatives in this respect include so far the expansion line of credit for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, by the Development Bank of Jamaica for MSMEs seeking to invest in renewable energy. The Ministry's 3030 plan, which aims to replace 30% of electricity generation to the national grid with renewable sources by 2030, is to be wholeheartedly supported. Mr. Speaker, through the increased use of renewable energy sources, we will reduce our carbon footprint and ensure that our children and their children will be able to enjoy a cleaner and healthier environment. Based on the comments by the opposition spokesman on energy, we seem to have convergence on this strategy across the island, which we welcome. The Energy Ministry is setting the stage for sustained reduction in the cost of energy, and this will assist our big manufacturers who are competing on the international stage and our micro, small and medium-sized enterprises which have to work that much harder to put out their products in an efficient and competitive manner. Families will also benefit from the reduced energy costs as well. They will no doubt be able to put these savings to better use. Mr. Speaker, we on this side agree with the opposition spokesman on energy and mining about the importance of energy in the growth and development of our country. We need to properly engage our people in the process of achieving energy diversification, energy efficiency and conservation, and we are certainly expecting energy to remain high on the agenda of national development. The Minister of Transport and Mining has been taking steps to see to the development of the following areas: the revitalization of the rail services, for which public-private partnership is now underway, involving Herzog, which submitted an unsolicited proposal of interest in 2013. The Vernon Field Development Plan, estimated to cost some US $2.5 billion over a 10-year phased development period. 3, the construction of the new Portmore Transportation Hub, expected to cost over £47 million. The proposed acquisition of 270 new buses by the JUTC. 5, the national transport policy coming on stream to guide the overall development of the transport sector. The national minerals policy being finalized to develop the sector and protect its resources. And 7, the acquisition of Alpart by JIS Company to take place by August 2016. On any measurement, it can only be said that that is a minister with vision and hard work and being proactive. By any measurement. And that's just an example of the kind of proactive government that we are all so proud to be part of. Mr. Speaker, during the sectoral presentation, the opposition spokesman on industry, investment and commerce raised concerns about the change of policy direction in relation to the importation of motor vehicles into our free zones and the special economic zones. Let me reiterate and clarify as much as possible. It is the duty of the Customs Department of any country to ensure that all goods entering a particular country, whether by air or by sea, do so in a particular manner and subject to security and to duties before such goods are released into the domestic market for their intended use. We maintain that the movement of motor vehicles into the free zones for the domestic market is an exception to this general principle, in light of the fact that there is already a regime and legal framework in place for the importation of motor vehicles into the domestic market. Free zones, Mr. Speaker, were not created to facilitate the importation of motor vehicles and their subsequent release into the domestic market. Let me reiterate. Free zones were not created to facilitate the importation of motor vehicles and their subsequent release into the domestic market. The ministry exists to facilitate production and export, and not wanton importation that enriches only a few. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the question and the presentation made by the Minister of Health. The relationship between health and our economy must today be seen as one of the cornerstones of the economic agenda. We understand the correlation that as the economy of a country improves, the health of its citizens also improves. However, the converse is also true. Improving the health of our citizens can directly result in economic growth because more people will be able to conduct efficient and effective activities at the workplace and start businesses. With regards to health, therefore, Mr. Speaker, we welcome initiatives such as the upcoming launch of the Jamaica Moves national campaign, which will call on Jamaicans to become more active. We also note the efforts of the minister through his ministry to reduce the time it takes to see a doctor and get treated in our public health system, particularly through the A&E pilot study, which is expected to cost some $350 million. The public should also welcome the move towards 24-hour pharmacy service in some hospitals and extended hours in some health centers. The training of 50% more critical care nurses are part of the effort to increase supply in the system, and the effort to reduce tobacco and alcohol use in our schools or among underage children is something that we must support. Mr. Speaker, we were particularly heartened at the tremendous contribution that was made by the opposition spokesman on health. We found it constructive. We found it well researched. He was a little less than generous in some of his comments and in terms of his recognition of the programs that had been enunciated by the minister previously. But that notwithstanding, his obvious commitment to working with the minister in the interest of the country is commendable, and he must be applauded for it. We look forward to a constructive relationship between the opposition and the government in this vital area of health. Mr. Speaker, turning to social protection programs. For social protection programs, the government has allocated $2 billion more in the budget this year. I want a glass of water, Mr. Speaker. A drink of water, anything. Let me hear it. Thank you. That will introduce a little more style in me. Mr. Speaker, with these additional funds, I have lipstick on my nose. No. With these additional funds, $29 billion will be spent this fiscal year for targeted programs to assist those Jamaicans who are in most need. We are ensuring that the most vulnerable in our society have a larger safety net, and this increased allocation will go a far way in consolidating the gains we have made so far in tackling poverty and advancing prosperity through social protection. The Labour and Social Security Ministry will also be providing a package of social services for approximately 2,500 families on the program for advancement through health and education path this year. This package of social services will increase access to housing solutions in collaboration with Food for the Poor, tertiary education, continuing education, and skills development, career counseling, job readiness preparation, and employment opportunities, business development training, and appropriate financial assistance for viable ventures. Tremendous and admirable set of objectives. Mr. Speaker, the Social Development Commission, SDC, must be commended for all the work it has been doing over the years, thereby making a real difference in the lives of persons in the many communities it visits daily. Under the Local Economic Development Support Program, which is being implemented by the SDC, over 4,500 jobs are to be created at the community level. In the area of occupational safety and health, Mr. Speaker, we are equally pleased that the National Occupational Safety and Health Policy, as well as the Public Sector Organization Occupational Safety and Health Policy, will be completed this year. As the Minister of Labour and Social Security has noted, a safe and healthy workplace is critical to productivity and prosperity. Jamaicans must be protected in the workplace. Education, Mr. Speaker. Education is no less critical to growth as any of the sectors previously mentioned. Education not only increases the prosperity and creativity of our people, but also promotes entrepreneurship and technological advances. Increasing attainment levels in the population, better employment prospects, and the increasing earnings that come through education can all contribute to growth and prosperity. Hence, we see the role being played by the Ministry of Education as critical to the whole growth process. For example, in areas such as early childhood education, for which some $30 million has been budgeted to reactivate the early childhood stimulation program. Initiatives such as the restructuring and rebranding of the youth information centers as youth innovation centers must not only be seen as part of the effort to develop new skills and promote entrepreneurship, but also as part of the thrust towards youth empowerment and sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the area of justice. With respect to justice, the Minister remains firmly committed to achieving timely development and delivery of justice in our courts. With the backlog reduction strategy being the primary focus of the ministry over the next few years. As the Minister of Justice stated in his presentation, this administration will be continuing, one, the Justice Reform Program, the program to remove and repeal outdated legislation. Three, the backlog reduction efforts in the courts. Four, the modernization and expansion of the courts. And five, the thrust to protect vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, even our greatest detractors could not but applaud such an objective. Security. Mr. Speaker, one of the major obstacles to us achieving the kind of growth that we have been discussing is crime. I don't need to restate the impact that crime has on our families, our tourism product, or on our ability to bring in new investors. This is something we all understand, and I am sure there is consensus on both sides of the House on this matter. We must take urgent action to tackle crime. The opposition spokesman on security, Peter Bunting, has said in this House, the member from Central St. Catherine, who is the opposition spokesman, Manchester, who is the opposition spokesman on national security, has said in this House that we don't need to reinvent the wheel to adequately address the crime problems, and for the most part, I agree with him. That is why this minister has declared that we will continue the programs and initiatives that have been working. That have been working. We are not opposed to collaboration. We are not opposed to holding hands and partnering on issues that are critical for the development of our country and the well-being of our people. But, Mr. Speaker, I stand with the Attorney General and I stand with the Security Minister on this extremely important matter. Immediate action is also required. It is not business as usual. We will take decisive action to take back Jamaica as one community, and we will take it back one community at a time. We must amend our laws to put tougher penalties in place for persons convicted of violent crimes, and we must fix our justice system, and we don't resile from that. Mr. Speaker, the time has also come for proper rehabilitation programs to be implemented in the nation's prisons. We have to educate our prisoners and give them skills so that when they are released, they don't have to go back to a life of crime to feed themselves and their children. Mr. Speaker, the Minister has outlined a number of other steps that will be taken by the Ministry of National Security to curb crime, including social intervention programs, greater use of technology, and greater use of community policing. I won't go back through them. They have been spoken by him eloquently already. However, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. If we are to be successful, we need the support of every single Jamaican. We cannot do it alone. Absolutely. And so to speak against a constructive and successful program is to be less than offering the kind of support that is necessary to solve this problem. This is not the time for one-upmanship and gamesmanship. This is the time to collaborate. Whatever our individual ambitions may be, let us repress those. Let us suppress them. Let us even hide them for the interests of the people. As the Minister of National Security has stated in his sectoral presentation, and we concur, crime, I'm quoting you, I'm quoting the Minister of National, and you support it. Crime accounts for 70% of Jamaica's gross domestic product. 7%. If we reduce crime, we can grow the economy without investing an extra dollar. If we reduce crime, it means economic growth and development for the country. Crime not only affects everybody, it's very costly to everybody. Mr. Speaker, similar to the opposition spokesman on national security and justice, the government is very much in favor of a bipartisan approach to tackling crime. You have not gotten that much support from this side for the last 15 years that you have been here. Accept it and work together. It is now time for less talk and more action. Mr. Speaker, what we do in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries is absolutely crucial to the growth agenda. We will continue the efforts to improve access to finance for the productive microsector, working closely with the Ministry of Finance, Development, Bank of Jamaica, and the private sector financial institutions, including banks, credit unions, microfinancing institutions, to foster a culture of entrepreneurship and innovation to unlock the creative potential of our people. We continue to push to harness and channel the expertise of our talented businessmen and women here and abroad through a national mentoring program. And we continue to facilitate innovation, business development, and the building of new industries. Among the new industries, relevant is the bamboo industry, and we'll be hearing more of that anon. In manufacturing, we will continue our efforts at expanding into agro-industry, efforts to grow the sector by strengthening its linkages with agriculture and tourism. We are talking about creating higher value-added products for export and local consumption using raw materials provided by the agricultural sector. For example, the use of cassava in red stripe beer, new initiatives in milk production, production of French fries using locally grown Irish potato, liquid sugar for the manufacturing sector to produce juices and beverages. Mr. Speaker, the question of the sugar industry, and I saw where, before I got up to speak, the opposition spokesman on housing and rural development has asked me 4 questions. And I don't know if I'll be permitted, Mr. Speaker, but I could quickly run through them because the answers I'll provide right now. Question number 1, is the minister aware of the importance of the Farm Road Program to rural development? Yes. 2, is the minister aware that in some instances contracts were signed for the execution of construction and rehabilitation of farm roads? Answer, yes. 3, can the minister categorically state when will we see the recommencement of the program?
No, on a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Stopped, and as we speak, work is going on in those where contracts...
Luther's question? Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
Where is he?
Who asked isn't in the House.
Well, he's probably...
Standing on a stand-up point of order.
Yes,
listening.
I am.
Point of order, Minister.
All right, he's probably listening.
Minister,
Oh, sorry.
please. Could you state your point of order, please?
Point of order. Member who asked the question, who posed the question, isn't in the House today and therefore isn't able to get the answers and would not be in a position to ask for any further clarification if necessary. I'm suggesting that the member answers the questions within the time allocated for question time, within allocated for question time during a regular sitting.
Mr. Speaker, I got.
House Leader. Order. I wish to hear the House Leader. Mr. Samuda, could you turn your mic off?
Mr. Speaker, questions in this House are asked during question time. Answers to questions is done during question time. But any speaker on his feet can make reference to any question that is outstanding at any time.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not debating whether or not the member would not be able to reference the questions. I'm only saying it would not remove the necessity to have the question answered during regular question time. It should not therefore be removed from the order paper because it has not been answered during the right time. So we're asking that the question be answered during regular question time when the member who has posed the question is able to say, will the minister answer the question standing in my name? He isn't here.
The member places question on the order table. It's my opinion, once it's on the table, it's public. And therefore, the member may answer, and if it is required, he should put it in writing for the next time. But once it's on the table, it's public, and he may require to proceed. Mr. Samuda, proceed.
Bobby. But you know, Mr. Speaker, the simple answer to all of this. Order. Mr. Speaker, the simple answer to all of this is that my speaking to these questions does not preclude me from answering them in the normal manner when the House next meets, when I can answer questions. It does no harm. I'm giving him a preview of what is to come. Which I hope will be helpful. Will the minister further advise with no ambiguity the government's policy as it pertains to this program? The government's policy is very simple. We are undertaking a review of the entire program, but all contracts signed and those in progress will continue. And when the review is complete, it will be brought and presented, and a full explanation will be given in each instance. Full transparency. So I don't mind little simple questions like these.
Mr. Speaker, please. I have a point of order. No, you're not the Speaker.
No, I don't.
Mr. Samuda, point of order.
That's it.
Go ahead, Mr. Daly.
Mr. Speaker, since the member has said that all roads under the farm work program, which
Mr. Speaker, this is not a point.
I'm on my feet.
This is not a point of order,
no,
Mr.
I'm
Speaker.
on my feet.
What you ought to do
Here
is ask
on my
member to
feet.
yield. Mr. Speaker, this is not a point of order. He needs to state the point of order. That is not a point of order.
No, I'm on my feet. I'm on my feet. The minister stated.
State your point of order, Mr. Daly.
All the roads for which contracts have been signed will continue or are continuing. That's what the minister said. I want to alert the minister that Collington Road,
this is not point of order.
for which a contract was signed,
What you ought to do
has
is
been stopped.
You can't allow this, Mr. Speaker. It's a point of order.
No, it is.
It is a point of order. Mr. Daly.
He's misleading the House. It is.
Mr. Daly.
Maybe the minister is not aware that for Collington the contract was signed and that has been stopped. Right. So you said all of them are continuing. That one has been stopped. No, I'm not saying misleading the House.
Mr. Daly, you have not sought a point of order. You have sought to make a statement.
Maybe you haven't heard what I said.
Okay.
Maybe he hasn't heard what I said. I say the minister says all of the...
I have listened to your statement, Mr.
Rule me
Daly.
out of order.
That's not a point of order. Mr. Samuda. Mr. Samuda. Minister Samuda. Minister Samuda, will you proceed, please?
Stop worrying about that. This government is not, and certainly this minister is not going to engage in the practices of the past of victimizing people because they don't come from the same party. Get that clear. Get that clear. And stop misleading your member. The sugar industry, Mr. Speaker, for Long Pond, over 2,000 tons of sugar has been produced to date.
Members, we are having difficulty in hearing the minister closing the debate. I'm asking members to give some order in the House so I can hear him. Proceed now, Mr. Samuda.
Okay, over 2,000 tons of sugar has been produced to date at the Long Pond factory. The reaping of all cane will be completed by the end of August. In Monimusk, further to the cabinet approval, I can report that all arrangements have now been made by the government through SCJ Holdings to operate that factory for the next crop. The water has been provided, and in fact, irrigation pumps have turned on today, and the farmers' cane, we expect, will be very, very well grown. In keeping with the provisions under the Sugar Transformation Program, I can now announce, Mr. Daly. No, Mr. Daly. That we will be spending this year over $700 million to rehabilitate cane roads under the program. EU, sugar transformation, and they stretch across the length and breadth of the country where cane is grown. In Westmoreland, hold on, in Westmoreland, we will be spending $82 million. In Hanover, we will be spending $103 million. In Trelawney, $170 million. In St. Thomas, $68 million. In Clarendon, $64 million, plus 70. That's right. Ramsbury as well, 70 million in Ramsbury. We'll be spending in sections of Racecourse Round to Hood Lane, Woodlands Road, all of those areas, we'll be spending $170 million. And in St. Elizabeth, Dobson to Elam, we'll be spending $30 million, a total of $770 million. And these estimates were prepared based on need, not greed. Need, not greed. Mr. Speaker, the challenges facing the sugar industry continue, but we are very clear in our minds. There is hope. For the immediate future, we must be prepared to diversify the industry, to maximize on the versatility of the sugar cane to produce multiple products, diversify our markets, invest more in field operations to maintain higher levels of productivity and efficiency. I turn finally, Mr. Speaker, to the area of livestock. The opposition spokesman on agriculture also mentioned the need for us to reduce our food imports, including livestock. Clearly, we cannot continue on a path where up to 50% of our food import bill is spent on imported products that we can grow and produce in Jamaica. Hence, as I announced during my presentation, we will be developing our pastures, increasing the output of the livestock sector, restoring the dairy sector. Mr. Speaker, so far as livestock is concerned, I believe it is safe to say that we are on the same page as the opposition spokesman on agriculture. Indeed, we are moving well beyond livestock. As the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Industry, Agriculture and Fisheries indicated in his presentation to this House, we have a wide range of initiatives to develop the agricultural sector. These include research as to how to grow efficiently organic farming produce, 2, we will be engaging 186 school gardens. The Prosperity Tree Program to produce excellent quality fruits for the market and assist in climate change. Prosperity, when you grow a tree and it come up and bear, that's prosperity. Processing facilities for training and expansion of the value chain for funds for fruits and vegetables with 7 incubators. Development of the agro-parks for agricultural production and the operation of the fish ponds in Hill Run. Those are but a sample of the initiatives that will be undertaken under the leadership of the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker,
the member time for speaking has expired. The House Leader, you may oblige.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the member's time be extended by 5 minutes to allow him to conclude his presentation.
The question is that the member's time be extended by 5 minutes. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Samuda.
Mr. Speaker, without growth, there can be no prosperity. And so, stimulating growth has become the #1 objective of the administration. Crime, however, remains one of the biggest threats to the growth and prosperity agenda. It must be and is being tackled at all levels. Government, opposition, private sector, all of us as Jamaica must work together to root out the threat of crime from our society. This must be our national goal. Mr. Speaker, there is absolutely no way that we can go forward as a country without the full support of both sides of this House. And the time has come for us to put aside petty squabbles, the view that unless it originates with me, it is to be suppressed, it is to be criticized, it is to be laughed at, it is to receive minimal attention. I had the honor and privilege last week to meet in Duff House and in Long Pond. And on those 2 visits, I met with 3 members of parliament who were part of the ceremony. 1 JLP, 2 PNP. And I can tell you that the level of responsible manner in which they conducted themselves and the presentations made by each has left me in a very positive mood, because I believe that our country is in good hands. Whether you share the political views at all times, there are times when you can agree and you can work together in the interest of the people of this country, especially the farming community. So I thank those members of parliament who were with me on that visit. So, Mr. Speaker, this has been a good exercise, one that we must continue to support the measures put out by the government and oppose, but oppose constructively, oppose with a sense of responsibility, decency, and good manners. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe it is left for me to close this debate and move the resolution. Be it resolved that this Honourable House of Representatives approve the plans and programs being pursued by the government in respect of ministries which were not included in the debate on the appropriations bill, and further approve the policy projections as announced for the financial year 2016-2017. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.